What would you do if your own sister slashed your wedding dress just weeks before the big day, then your parents told you to let it go? What families are supposed to protect us, not destroy us? If you've ever lived through betrayal like this or even witnessed it, share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your story. And if you're watching this video from the very beginning, drop a comment so I know you're still with me. I still remember the way my heart stopped beating that afternoon in Dallas, Texas. I had driven to my parents' house, the one I grew up in, to pick up my wedding dress for the final fitting. The October sun was bright, filtering through the lace curtains of my old bedroom. Everything felt strangely familiar until I opened the closet. There it was, hanging on the wooden hanger I had carefully chosen. My dream dress, except it wasn't a dream anymore. It was shredded. The delicate lace sleeves were hacked apart as though someone had taken shears to them in a fit of rage. The bodice, once perfect, hand-beaded with tiny crystals, was slashed open, its fabric curling outward like a wound that would never heal. Entire panels had been ripped down the middle. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My throat closed, my chest tightened, and I had to grip the closet doorframe to steady myself. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a snag on a hanger or some moth chewing through fabric. No, this was personal. Someone had taken scissors to the one thing I had been saving, cherishing, protecting. I stumbled downstairs, my pulse racing, and found my younger sister, Lily, leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling on her phone. "Lily," I choked out, my voice trembling. "What happened to my dress?" She looked up with a blank face, then smirked ever so slightly before masking it with wide-eyed innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mom came rushing in, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What's going on?" I explained, my voice breaking. That my dress had been destroyed. My father, sitting at the kitchen table, looked stunned, but said nothing. Mom, however, shook her head and waved me off. "Sweetheart, it must have been moths. Or maybe you stored it wrong. These vintage fabrics are delicate, you know." "Moths don't cut fabric with scissors," I snapped, my voice louder than I'd intended. Lily's eyes filled with crocodile tears. "Why are you always accusing me? You think I'd ruin your wedding like that?" She turned to Mom, sobbing into her arms as though she were the victim. And just like that, the roles were set again. My mother, comforting Lily, defending her, telling me I was cruel for making accusations. My father quietly staring into his coffee cup. I wanted to scream. Instead, I left. I took photos of the destroyed gown and drove straight to the bridal boutique downtown. The owner examined the damage and confirmed what I already knew. These were deliberate cuts. "I'm so sorry, honey. There's no way to repair this. Even if we tried, it would cost more than a brand new dress." The words hit me like a second punch. My dream gown was gone. 3 weeks before my wedding, I had nothing. I spent the next 48 hours calling every bridal shop in the city. No one had a replacement in my size, at least not in time. Eventually, I found a plain white dress at a department store. It was serviceable, but nothing like the gown I had saved for months to buy. When I showed it to Mom, she shrugged. "It'll do. Don't be dramatic. You're marrying Ryan, that's what matters, not some dress." But every time I looked at that substitute gown, all I saw were the jagged, angry cuts in the original. All I heard was Lily's fake sobs and my mother's excuses. And yet, there was something even worse than the shredded fabric, the nagging question in my mind. Because deep down I knew my sister had done it. But why? What could possibly drive her to destroy the one thing I had dreamed of since I was a little girl? The strange thing about pain is how it opens old doors. After the dress was destroyed, memories I thought I'd boarded up years ago began creaking open on their hinges. Suddenly I was 12 again, perched at the kitchen table with poster board and watercolor paints, carefully shading a sunrise for the district art competition. Lily barreled through the dining room with a popsicle in one hand and our cat trailing after her. "Move!" she hissed, brushing against the table. The glass of rinse water tipped, spilling a cloudy lake across my project. The paper buckled, colors bled into a muddy bruise. I stared at the ruin, throat tight. "Lily!" She shrugged, eyes flicking to the doorway where Mom would appear at any second. "Accidents happen." Mom swept in just as scripted. "Emma, why would you leave something so delicate right here? You know your sister's a free spirit. Free spirit, her favorite phrase, the family coat of paint she slapped over every mess. I worked on that for weeks, I whispered. Mom's face softened toward Lily. Go wash your hands, honey. To me, only a sigh. Next time you'll be more careful. David stood by the refrigerator with the sports section, pretending to read, pretending not to hear. It was always like that, his silence a steady hum beneath our lives, the background noise of a house that prized peace over fairness. Years later, when I was 16, I found my babysitting money missing from the shoebox under my bed, 2 summers of scrubbing syrup off plastic booths at the diner, folding kids' laundry, walking dogs in July heat that hovered near 100 degrees. I confronted Lily. She cried as if on cue, and told Mom I didn't share because I thought I was better than her. Mom lined us up in the living room like defendants. You have more because you work more. That doesn't make it right to hoard. Give your sister half. Half? I croaked. It'll teach you generosity. It taught me something, all right. It taught me how to swallow things that never should be swallowed. In Dallas, summers stretch like taffy. The heat presses down and doesn't let up until October, and even then it lingers. That's how favoritism felt in our house, endless, sticky, impossible to move through without collecting dust and resentment. Lily learned early that tears were currency. Mom always paid out. I coped the way oldest daughters do. I became useful. Straight A's, never missed curfew, a part-time job senior year. When I left for college, I packed my car in the pre-dawn dark and didn't look back until I hit the Oklahoma line. Freedom smelled like coffee from a gas station and the brittle pages of used textbooks. No one asked me to make myself smaller so someone else could fit. Then Ryan came along, steady, kind, the kind of man who carries groceries and asks real questions and makes you feel seen. For the first time, I thought maybe I could have a family without a pecking order. Maybe love didn't have to be rationed. But families have a way of calling you home for holidays and milestones. When we got engaged, Mom was ecstatic about hosting the dress fittings at her house. The closet's cooler, she said. Better for the fabric. I told myself it was practical. I told myself things were different now. They weren't. In the months before the wedding, I started noticing Lily's posts on social media, the vague status kind that begs for attention. Some people always land on their feet, she wrote, followed by a string of broken heart emojis. Must be nice. When her boyfriend, Marcus, ended things, the house turned into a hospital ward. Mom brought Lily bowls of soup, ice cream, and the remote. Lily called in sick to work for an entire week. Breakups are a trauma, Mom murmured, as if Lily had survived a storm and I was the storm. So when I found my dress destroyed, the shock wasn't really about scissors or lace. It was the realization that the hierarchy I'd fled was still intact, perfectly preserved like a family recipe. The same roles, the same script. I was the sturdy one, the reasonable one, the one expected to tolerate damage so everyone else could feel okay. That night, unable to sleep, I sat at our apartment table with a legal pad and drew 2 columns. What I can control and what I can't. It was something Ryan's therapist friend had once suggested for handling anxiety. Under control, I wrote, my response, my boundaries, my evidence. Under can't, I wrote, my mother's excuses, my sister's choices, the past. The next morning, I called the boutique again, then 3 more, just to hear a different voice say the same thing. There was no duplicate dress, not in my size, not in time. In the quiet that followed, I realized the thing that hurt wasn't only the loss, it was the denial. The way a person can stand in a room with you, look you in the eye, and say black is white, scissors are moths, cruelty is coincidence. When I returned to my parents' house to pick up gifts later that week, I wandered into my old room, pulled by some old tide I couldn't name. A cardboard storage box sat half-tucked under the bed. Inside were photo envelopes, a high school yearbook, and a manila folder, thin, fraying, stained by time. I reached for it without thinking. Inside were printed screenshots, sentences like bruises, comments about my wedding, my dress, my so-called perfect life. A brag, almost flippant. Maybe it's time she finally learns what disappointment feels like. My hands began to shake. Whoever printed them had also highlighted dates 2 days before my gown was ruined. The room swam. The air thinned. Down the hall, I heard the garage door rumble open. Mom and Lily were home. The screenshots burned in my pocket like contraband. I had taken nearly a dozen photos of Lily's private posts before sliding the folder back under the bed and forcing my face into neutral. By the time Mom and Lily walked into the house, grocery bags in their hands, I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll on my phone. "Emma, you're still here?" Mom asked, surprise lacing her voice. "I thought you left hours ago." "Just needed to finish something," I murmured, forcing calm. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Lily breezed past me, humming, her ponytail swinging like nothing had happened. She opened a bag of chips and leaned against the counter, crunching loudly. For a flicker of a second, her eyes darted toward me sharp, watchful, as if daring me to say something. Then she plastered on a smile. I left soon after, clutching my phone like a lifeline. That night in our apartment, Ryan sat across from me at the small dining table, his tie loosened, his hands folded in front of him. I slid the photos across. He scrolled slowly, his jaw tightening with each swipe. "Emma," he whispered, looking up. "This is proof." She admitted it not in so many words, but enough. "She planned this. She wanted to hurt you." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Ryan leaned back, sighing. "We can't let them keep sweeping this under the rug. It's not just about the dress anymore. It's about your parents choosing denial over truth. It's about your sister learning she can burn the house down and still get dessert." I wanted to argue, to tell him confrontation would only make things worse. But the words in those screenshots, "Maybe it's time she finally learns what disappointment feels like," were seared into my mind. How could I stay silent when Lily had practically bragged about it? The next morning, my cousin Beth called. "I don't want to stir the pot," she began. "But Emma, you should know Lily's been running her mouth on Facebook, posting vague statuses about how unfair life is, how you always get everything." "I know," I whispered. "I've seen more than vague posts." There was a pause on the line. "Emma, listen. People notice. They may not say it out loud, but they see how your mom covers for her. They see your dad staying quiet. You're not crazy." Those 3 words, "you're not crazy," hit harder than any insult. I arranged the confrontation like an ambush, though my hands shook the entire time. One evening after work, I drove to my parents' house with Ryan. Dad was already home, sitting at the table with a half-finished crossword. Mom hovered at the stove. Lily lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone. "I need everyone in the kitchen," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. They gathered reluctantly. Lily rolled her eyes. I set my phone on the counter, the screen glowing with the screenshots. "I found these in my old room. Printed, hidden in a box. These are Lily's posts." Silence fell heavy. Dad leaned in, squinting. His face blanched. Mom shook her head instantly. "Anyone can fake screenshots, Emma. This doesn't prove anything. It proves intent," I said sharply. "She was planning to ruin my wedding before she ever touched the dress. She wrote about it. She bragged about it." Lily's lips pressed together. Then, with theatrical tremors, she stammered, "That's taken out of context." I was venting. Everyone vents. I didn't do anything. I felt fury crawl up my throat. "Venting doesn't slice fabric into ribbons, Lily." Dad cleared his throat. "Sandra, these look real. And the dates," Mom snapped. "David, don't you dare take sides against your daughter." "She's my daughter too," he muttered, a tremor in his voice. Lily burst into tears, her favorite shield. "Why do you always think the worst of me? You're all against me. I'm the victim here." And there it was again, the same old script. Mom wrapping her arms around Lily, glaring at me over her shoulder. Dad frozen. Torn. But this time I didn't back down. I looked each of them in the eye. "I am done being the scapegoat so she can be the golden child. If you all want to keep protecting her, fine. But I will not sit quietly while she destroys pieces of my life and then cries her way out of it." "Emma," Mom hissed, "you're going to ruin this family." "No, Mom," I said, my voice low and cold. This family ruined itself a long time ago. The Carter family kitchen had always been a battlefield, disguised as a safe haven. Growing up, it smelled like cinnamon toast and lemon-scented cleaner. But beneath that sweetness lived the tension no one dared name. On the night I decided to confront them once and for all, the air was thicker than any summer heat in Texas. I placed my phone on the kitchen island. The glow of the screen lit up the screenshots I'd captured, every cruel word, every bitter sentence my sister had typed about my wedding. The room went silent except for the steady hum of the refrigerator. "Explain this," I said, my voice firm. Dad leaned forward, adjusting his glasses, his brow furrowing deeper with each scroll. Mom crossed her arms, lips pursed tight as if bracing for a storm. Lily didn't even glance down, her gaze flicked to me, sharp and defiant, a smirk threatening the corners of her mouth. "This is ridiculous," Mom said finally. Her voice clipped. "Anyone can make fake posts these days. You expect us to believe this just because you say so?" I locked eyes with her. "No, Mom. I expect you to believe it because it's the truth. Look at the dates. Look at the words." She said she wanted me to experience disappointment. And 2 days later, my dress was destroyed. Dad inhaled slowly, as if oxygen itself had become a fragile commodity. "Sandra, these do match up," his voice cracked. "We can't ignore this." Lily's performance began, tears welling, her lip trembling, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. "I was just upset, okay? Marcus had left me. I was venting. People vent online all the time. That doesn't mean I actually did anything. You expect me to believe that coincidence?" My voice was trembling now, but not from fear, from rage finally unshackled. "You mocked me online, you planned it, and then my gown ended up in ribbons. Don't tell me that's venting." Mom reached for Lily, pulling her close like a shield. "Emma, enough! You are harassing your sister. She has been through so much. Why can't you be compassionate? Why do you always attack her?" The words landed like stones in my chest, but they weren't new. I'd heard versions of them my entire life. Ryan spoke for the first time, his voice calm but unyielding. "This isn't compassion, Mrs. Carter. This is enabling. You've excused her behavior for years, and now it's escalated to sabotage. Emma deserves better." The room snapped to silence. My mother's face hardened like cement. Dad rubbed his forehead. "Lily, I can't defend this anymore. If you did this—" "I didn't," she shrieked, cutting him off, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Why does everyone hate me? Why is it always my fault?" Her voice rose to a wail, echoing against the cabinets. Mom glared at me. "See what you're doing? You're tearing this family apart, all over a dress." I felt something inside me break, not a fragile thing, but a chain. "No, Mom. This isn't about a dress. This is about a lifetime of you protecting her no matter the cost, and me paying the price every single time. I'm done being the sacrifice for your peace." For once, Dad looked directly at me. His eyes were glassy, weary. "Emma's right," he said quietly. "We can't keep pretending." The words hit the table like a gavel, and for the first time, I saw my mother falter. Weddings are supposed to be a celebration, a culmination of love and hope and family gathered under one roof. Mine felt like a performance staged on shaky ground. On that October morning in Dallas, I slipped into a white dress that looked fine in photographs, but felt hollow on my skin. It wasn't the vintage gown I had saved for, the one with lace sleeves and beadwork that shimmered like morning frost. No, this one came off a department store rack for less than a quarter of the price. It was serviceable, but every time the fabric brushed against my arm, I remembered the jagged cuts in the dress that was supposed to be mine. Ryan kissed my forehead as we stood in the church dressing room. "You look beautiful," he whispered. His sincerity wrapped around me like a blanket, but the hurt still pressed at the edges. "Thank you," I managed. I wanted to believe him, wanted to soak in the love of the day. But the shadows lingered. The chapel smelled of polished wood and old hymnals. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, painting colors across the pews. Guests filled the seats, smiling, snapping photos, whispering about how radiant the bride looked. They couldn't see the storm beneath the veil. In the front row sat my parents. Dad gave me a small, weary nod. The kind that said, "I see you," even if he couldn't fix what was broken. Mom, on the other hand, sat stiff and proud, her hand tightly gripping Lily's. And Lily, my sister, my saboteur, looked radiant in her cocktail dress, her smile dazzling for the cameras. When I walked down the aisle, my eyes caught hers for a fraction of a second. There was no guilt, no shame, no flicker of remorse. Only envy simmering just beneath her painted lashes. The ceremony moved forward like a well-rehearsed play. The vows, the rings, the kiss. Everyone clapped. The pastor blessed us. Outwardly it was perfect. Inwardly, I was standing on cracked glass, terrified of what might break next. At the reception, the air buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. The DJ played familiar songs, and friends pulled us onto the dance floor. I forced smiles, twirled in Ryan's arms, tried to bury the ache with laughter, but every time I glanced toward the head table, I saw Lily laughing too loudly, tossing her hair, leaning in so guests could hear her dramatic stories. She thrived on attention, and I wondered, did she feel victorious? Did she believe she had already stolen part of my day simply by tearing apart the dress and walking in here as though nothing had happened? The cake cutting came. Ryan's hand covered mine as we sliced through the white frosting, the guests cheering. Cameras flashed. It should have been sweet, playful, but as I looked out over the crowd, I caught Lily's gaze again. Her expression was flat, almost blank, as if she were watching a movie she despised but couldn't stop viewing. My stomach twisted. She wasn't done. Later, as Ryan and I slipped away from the reception to breathe, he squeezed my hand. "You did it. We're married. That's what matters." I nodded, pressing my cheek against his shoulder. He was right. Yet I couldn't shake the weight pressing down on me. The day had gone smoothly enough, but the undercurrent of resentment was still there, thick as Texas humidity. Because a wedding is more than a dress. Yes, but a dress is also a symbol. And symbols matter. My sister had tried to take that from me, and my mother had told me to forgive and move on. How do you move on when the people who hurt you keep sitting at your table, smiling for the photos, pretending everything is fine? 3 days after the wedding, I returned to my parents' house in Dallas to collect the gifts that had been delivered there. The October air had turned crisp. The kind that carried the smell of burning leaves and hinted at coming winter. I should have been glowing, still wrapped in the joy of newlywed life. Instead, my chest tightened as I pulled into the driveway, headlights sweeping across the familiar brick and shuttered windows. The house looked the same as it always had, but I knew better. Behind those walls lived a script we had all memorized. Lily the golden child, me the scapegoat, Mom the defender, Dad the silent referee. I wasn't walking into a home, I was walking into a theater where the lines had never changed. I carried a few boxes upstairs to my old bedroom. The walls were still painted pale blue, the ceiling fan hummed like it always did, but the room felt smaller, haunted by old echoes. I crouched to pull another box from under the bed, thinking it was filled with yearbooks or forgotten sweaters. Instead, my hand brushed against a manila folder, thin and soft at the edges from being handled too often. Curiosity prickled. I slid it out. Inside were printed screenshots, black ink on white paper, words I recognized instantly because I had read them on my phone just days earlier. Lily's words, bitter, jealous posts from her private Facebook group, complaining about how unfair it was that I got a wedding while her relationship with Marcus had crumbled. I skimmed quickly, my pulse quickening. Some people always get what they want. Maybe it's time she finally learns what disappointment feels like. The words were underlined in pink highlighter. The date stamp jumped out at me, 2 days before my dress had been cut to pieces. I gripped the folder so tightly the paper crumpled. This wasn't just venting online. These were plans. This was intent. My stomach churned as I pulled out my phone, snapping photo after photo. My hands shook, but I forced myself to keep going, page after page. The evidence was undeniable now, preserved not just on my phone but in Lily's own printed copies, hidden away in my old room like trophies. The garage door rumbled open downstairs. My heart stuttered. Mom and Lily were home. I shoved the folder back under the bed, slipped my phone into my pocket, and sat on the edge of the mattress, trying to look casual. Footsteps creaked up the stairs. Emma? Mom's voice floated in, sharp but sweet. What are you still doing here? Ah, just finishing up, I said, forcing my tone to sound even. Lily appeared in the doorway, her smile sugary, her eyes cold. For a moment, our gazes locked. And I wondered if she knew. If she suspected what I had just found. She leaned on the doorframe, tossing her hair back, as if daring me to say something. I didn't. Not yet. Back at our apartment that night, I spread the photos across the table. Ryan leaned over them, his brow furrowed. This is it, he said. It's not just circumstantial anymore. She printed these. She planned it. She wanted you hurt. I pressed my fingers against my temples. I know. But if I bring this to my parents, Mom will twist it. She'll say Lily was emotional. Not thinking straight. She'll find a way to excuse it. She always does. Ryan reached for my hand. Then this isn't about convincing them. This is about you standing up for yourself. For once, you don't have to carry their denial. You can say the truth out loud, whether they want to hear it or not. 2 days later, I called and told my parents I wanted a family meeting. I made my voice sound calm, but inside my nerves rattled like loose change. That evening, we gathered in the kitchen. Dad sat at the table with his crossword. Mom hovered near the stove. Lily slouched in a chair with her phone in hand. Ryan stood at my side, silent but steady. I laid the printed photos on the counter. I found these in my old room. They're Lily's posts. They prove she destroyed my dress on purpose. It is a reigns of the strided. I still help to starring. Dad's eyes widened. He leaned closer, scanning the lines. Mom shook her head instantly, her voice sharp. Emma, stop. This is not evidence. These are private feelings taken out of context. Context? My voice rose. She wrote that she wanted me to experience disappointment. And then she cut up my dress. That's not context, that's cause and effect. Lily's face went pale. For once, the tears didn't come immediately. Her mouth opened, then closed. Finally, she muttered, I didn't mean it literally. I was just upset. Upset doesn't slice through fabric with scissors, I shot back. Dad rubbed his forehead, his voice low. Sandra, we can't deny this anymore. But Mom's face hardened. Even if Lily did it, she was in pain. She'd just been dumped. You should have shown compassion instead of turning this into a witch hunt. I felt fury rise in my chest. Compassion doesn't mean letting someone destroy my life and then lie about it. If this family can't admit the truth, then maybe I don't belong here anymore. Aridid intentionally. The weeks after the confrontation dragged by like heavy rain clouds refusing to break. I kept my distance from my parents' house, answering only the occasional call from Dad. Mom didn't bother reaching out. And Lily, well, she stayed silent, except for the occasional cryptic post on Facebook that made my stomach twist. Some people ruin everything and still think they're the victim. Soundcarded in stains intelligence stain has enclosing. I tried to ignore her, tried to focus on newlywed life with Ryan, but the bitterness seeped in like smoke under a door. Then, one Sunday evening, my cousin Beth called. Her voice carried both sympathy and excitement, the kind of tone that said she had news she wasn't sure how to deliver. Emma, she began. I think you should know. Lily's been parading her new relationship all over social media. His name's Marcus Young. Have you heard about him? I hadn't. Beth went on. She's moving fast, talking about marriage, posting couple selfies every day. But here's the kicker. One of my friends was at a party last weekend, and apparently Marcus heard something about the dress. My breath caught. What do you mean? Someone at the party mentioned it, joking, like, didn't your girlfriend cut up her sister's wedding gown? Marcus looked shocked. He started asking questions. The words sent a chill down my spine. For months, Lily had wriggled out of accountability by hiding behind tears and Mom's excuses. But Marcus didn't carry years of family history to blind him. To him, the idea that his girlfriend had destroyed her sister's dress wasn't a funny rumor, it was a red flag. 2 days later, I got confirmation. Dad called, his voice low and tired. Emma, I think you should know. Lily and Marcus had a fight. He confronted her about the dress. At first, she denied it, but he pushed. He had screenshots. One of her so-called friends gave them to him. Eventually, she admitted it. My chest tightened. She confessed? Yes. A pause. She told him she did it because she was jealous of your happiness. She thought it would make her feel better if you were disappointed too. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles ached. I had waited for this moment for the truth to come out of her mouth, but the satisfaction I imagined wasn't there. Instead, a wave of nausea washed over me. What did Marcus do? I asked. Dad sighed. He left, said he couldn't be with someone who could hurt her own sister like that. She's been calling him non-stop, but he won't answer. That night, my phone rang again. Lily's name flashed across the screen. For a long moment, I considered ignoring it, but something in me wanted to hear what she would say now that her lies had crumbled. Emma. Her voice was ragged, almost unrecognizable. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She sobbed, the sound wet and desperate. I don't know what came over me. I was angry, I was hurt, and I took it out on you. I never meant for it to go this far. Please, can we fix this? I don't want to lose my family. Her words should have moved me. This was the confession I'd begged for, the apology I thought I needed. But all I heard was timing. She hadn't confessed because her conscience weighed on her. She confessed because Marcus had walked away. Lily, I said quietly, you had chance after chance to be honest. You chose to lie, and now you're sorry only because you lost him, not because of what you did to me. That's not true, she cried. I regret everything. I'll do anything to make it right. I closed my eyes. You can't uncut a dress. You can't erase the way you lied to my face and made me feel crazy. I don't know if there's a way back from that. There was silence on the line except for her uneven breaths. So you're just going to hate me forever? I didn't answer. Later, Ryan wrapped an arm around me as I sat on the couch, staring at the phone. How do you feel? He asked gently. I struggled for words. Empty. I thought I'd feel vindicated. Instead, it just feels late. Too late. He nodded. That's because she didn't confess to heal your relationship. She confessed to save herself. There's a difference. I leaned against him, letting his steadiness anchor me. He was right, and it left me with a new, sharper question. If Lily's apology wasn't real repentance, what would happen when Mom inevitably swooped in to demand forgiveness, to insist I play my old role as the bigger person? The call from Mom came again the next morning, her voice tight but pleading. Emma, your sister has apologized. She's hurting. Don't let this tear our family apart. I listened, but my heart was no longer swayed by guilt. For years, I had been told to be the bigger person, to forgive, to absorb every wound for the sake of peace. But peace built on silence is no peace at all. I can't pretend anymore. There was stunned silence, then Mom's quiet sigh. I ended the call before she could argue. Later that evening, Ryan and I stood in our small Dallas apartment, boxes of wedding gifts piled around us. The future stretched ahead uncertain, maybe fractured, but for the first time, it felt like my future, not one dictated by old family roles.